All right, guys, welcome to the Sea Service Forum. If you watch one video in this entire series, this is the one. This is by far the most difficult and confusing document in any process, not just Anchor Academy. Luckily, Anchor Academy has simplified the process quite a bit, but there's still some specific instructions we want to share with you to make sure that you get through this really quickly. First and foremost, remember the United States Coast Guard requires that you have 360 total days on the water, and 90 of those days must be recent, which means they have to have been within the last 3 years. So the question is asked, what is a day? A day on the water is equivalent to 4 hours on the water. Now here's the tricky part. You don't actually have to have been driving the boat that entire time or even at all. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but getting your captain's license could actually happen without ever having been the captain of the boat. So now that we've defined what a day on the water is, again, the 4 hours, we have to now show the Coast Guard that you have that time. And they want to know when and on what boat that you did that on. And this can get pretty tricky if you're trying to go back 10, 15 years to account for all of the sea service that you guys have, because most of you have far more than 360 days. So what I say is let's start with the most recent experience first and move our way backwards until we've reached the minimum requirement of 360 days on the water and 90 recent days. That way we don't have to file multiple forms. You're probably wondering to yourself, multiple forms, why would I file multiple forms? Well, each vessel that you use to get your sea service needs to be separate, as well as the days on that boat you can't account for twice. So it's possible that you may need to add several vessels, and you can do that below. You can add as many vessels as you need to reach those 360 days, but just be sure to have the boat name and the registration number ready if you're going to account for that vessel's time. But it gets tricky if you try to go back 10 or 15 years and try to remember those boat names and especially the registration numbers, which is why we recommend starting with the most recent boats and moving your way backwards until you've reached that minimum of 360 days. You'll see that there's a ticker on the software that counts down from 360 as you enter in the number of days on the water. Lastly, keep in mind that if you didn't own the vessel, and the Coast Guard does check into this, that you'll have to have the signature of the owner of that vessel at that time. All you'll need is their last name and their signature. But we get to that at a later stage. There's actually a step in the process below that takes care of all of that for you. So right now, let's just concern ourselves with putting the boat name and the registration numbers onto these forms, as well as the days that you feel that you were on the water on that vessel. So let's get started and pay attention to the number of days you rack up, and also be sure not to overlap certain days.